In today's episode, I'm joined by Dan Shrigley, who's on a powerful mission to ensure what happened to his father never happens to anyone else. After witnessing his dad struggle with severe depression, Dan turned his pain into purpose, reaching over 2 million people online and leading Shoulder to Shoulder, a community for 350 plus men dedicated to mental health and prevention. He now works with companies, conferences, and brands to inspire proactive action before crisis, not just conversation after it. And I really like that, because I think in many areas of society, we're dealing with things that were so easily preventable. How did you become Dan Shrigley?
Yeah, I really like that question. How did I become Dan Shrigley? Lots of things have happened, I think, to get to this point. And I think who Dan Shrigley is has probably changed a lot over the years. But I had pretty normal upbringing. Grew up in the south of the UK in a little village. Did all my schooling, went to university, loved uni. It was just absolute best 3 years of my life. And then...
What did you do at uni?
I did economics.
Oh.
So I was down in Exeter, which
Nice.
is a beautiful part of the world. We had Dartmoor nearby, we had the sea. It was just a great place to be. Campus uni, so it was very intimate and it was a great place to form a strong community. And then I think I kind of went on this very stereotypical 20s mission of trying to work out who I was or who I am. So that involved a few kind of stints in London in the corporate world. I did a bit of traveling. I lived in Japan 4 months. Looking back, I had so many amazing experiences, but I think I was on this mission to kind of work out, well, what do I want to do? What do I enjoy? What am I passionate about? What gives me purpose? Who am I? And so recently I've been on this mission to kind of get my spark back a little bit, because when I was down in Exeter at uni, I felt like I had such a good spark. I felt confident walking into a room, all those kind of things you associate with that spark. And then in recent times, I've kind of felt like that spark had gone and I didn't really feel like Dan Shrigley anymore. And so I've been on this mission to kind of get it back, and I feel like I'm coming through the other side of that. So yeah, I feel like now 28, I'm finally got a grasp on, okay, I think I know who Dan Shrigley is, and I'm kind of keen to live that person every day.
So you say you think you know. If you was to summarize it and say 3 traits, 3 values, what do you think would be, let's say values actually, what do you think are the 3 main values that you have?
So that is actually one thing I've been trying to do to work out more about myself, is to understand what my values actually are. So I do know the answer to that question. For me, I think a big value is adventure. I like trying new things, new experiences, going to new places, whatever it might be. I massively value autonomy, which I think is why the corporate world didn't really suit me, because that structure and that being told what to do all the time might sit well for some people, but not for me. So that's a big one for me. And then I think relationships in general is a huge value for me. The quality and how good my relationships are makes a massive impact on how I feel day to day, whether that's romantic relationships or relationships with friends, relationships with family. And there's a few more values sprinkled in there as well. But those 3, I'd say, are really, really core parts of me that I now understand. Last week I just got the train down to Folkestone from London because I love adventure. And that day was just an amazing day. It was so spontaneous. I went in the sea, it was freezing, but it was adventure.
Wow,
I had the autonomy to do it, So it's I was living my values in that day. And I think that's what I realized, is that when I live my values on a given day, it makes me tick.
I love how all of those things happened in that moment where you decided to go on that trip, because you had that autonomy, you went on an adventure, the unknown. To me, that's what adventure means. It's I don't know what's going to happen. I've got no idea what's going to happen, and then I don't know, did you meet any people down there? Did you go with friends, or was it on your own?
I didn't, but I think I kind of had a few, hellos to people on the beach or things like that. But I think relationships is an interesting one, because there's obviously relationships with other people, but you have a relationship with yourself as well. And I think in order to have good relationships with other people, you need to have a good relationship with yourself. For me right now, balancing that solo time, connecting with people is so important. If I have 2 or 3 days without connecting with anyone, it doesn't do good things to me. I have to be around people. But I do also appreciate that solo time sometimes is really helpful, because that's when you can really look in on yourself and get comfortable with yourself.
I think what you've hit upon there is a real crux of a lot of what might shape this conversation. And that is that whole idea of getting to know ourselves, that whole idea of knowing who we are, what we want. I think we live in such a message-driven world where at every opportunity, no matter where we are, we're bombarded with messages that are telling us who we are, are, what we want, how to act, all of these different things. And I think intuitively, we kind of know who we are. Like when I watch my children, when I watch them as young kids, they knew exactly who they are. They knew what they wanted. They knew what they didn't want. They knew what they liked, what they didn't like. They knew exactly what they were the fully formed human almost. And it's only through all these messages of, oh, you should dress this way, you should talk this way, you should act this way, that they start to lose that. And I find it so interesting. I mean, how old are you?
28.
28. So at 28, you're already deepening that relationship with yourself. I'm 45 and I've been on a lifelong mission to get to know who I am. And the other part of it as well is you just think you know who you are, and then you change a little bit. You might meet somebody, or you might get a different job, or I don't know, you have children or something, and that changes you too. So talk to me a bit more about that whole getting to know yourself, and let's try and relate it to something that men can take away today as why it's important to get to know yourself before you start going out and building relationships.
Yeah, why is that important? I think it's really important because what can happen is if you don't know yourself, is you then build relationships with other people, especially close friendships or romantic relationships. And if you don't have that strong core structure of who you are, you're going to be very easily influenced or swayed by what other people believe or say. And so I used to find myself, someone would say, oh, what do you think about this? I'd be like, I don't actually know where I stand on that. And I'd probably just take on what their view was because I didn't have that core foundation of what I believed in. And I think you can only work that out when you're truly on your own. So I think it's really important. And then when you do have that integrity and you are able to say, actually, no, this is my value and this is what I believe in, that feels really great. And I think it's really good for confidence and self-belief. Whereas when you're like, I don't know, but like whatever, whatever you think, I'll go along with that.
I mean, I think that's a great way to put it, because I think when you know yourself, you can choose to go along with someone else's views. You can choose to be curious and to have a conversation about it, or even change your mind. But the key word there is choice, right? It's beneficial to have a stance first, at least think you know what you want.
Yeah, exactly. You have to take that time to know what your stance is. And it's not to say you need to sit in a room for like 5 months and be like, I need to work out all my stances on this. I think it's just having the basic thing is like, okay, well, what are my values? And I think that doesn't take that long to get to that answer. And then if day to day you're living by those values or standing by them, then that is a great first step to success in my eyes.
Our values are our moral compass. They direct us towards what is for us and what isn't. And I think really if you looked at life as a collection of decisions and choices, although it's more than that, obviously, if you looked at it like that, quite often we make the wrong decisions or we take the wrong choices, and it's because we feel the pressure from somebody else who might be a very powerful character, who might be a very dominating character. That doesn't mean that you're weak in any way. It just means that you don't feel that you need to put your energy in that direction. That is something that I notice in people, that dominating character is quite often they need to believe in those things that they're talking about so much. And actually, when that house of cards falls down, you really do see their insecurities, and you realize that it's not that they're strong, it's actually that they're so terrified that this thing that they believe in isn't real or true, that it literally shakes their values and their core,
Yeah, I think it's a real strength, and it's a great trait to be able to listen in and appreciate other people's views or what they think, because it might influence you it won't change your moral compass or change your values, but it can add a bit of extra spice to it. I think, oh yeah, I hadn't really thought about that before. So I think it's really important to be able to accept or listen to what other people are saying, even if it's uncomfortable.
I think some of the best conversations I've ever had have been the uncomfortable ones. I worry that as a society, we're losing the skill to have meaningful debates, to have conversations, because I think that's the opportunity. If you and I disagree on something, that's okay. We don't have to hate each other. We can have a conversation about it, and I can either learn to defend my view or abandon it. Because here's the thing, I think too much in society are people having conversations where they're not interested in getting to the truth, they just want to be right. And that's a problem, because you're not always right. Sometimes you're wrong or misinformed,
Yeah, you can't always be right. It's an unrealistic expectation. And I think letting go of that need to be right all the time is quite freeing. Like, it's okay to be wrong. I mean, I say that I'm not great at it. I think growing up in a system where you're always graded in school on exams or what your degree is or like how well you're doing at work, like it's always graded. So you're always striving to like hit that successful point. And even recently, I've just realized I'm really bad at failing. Like I hate failing. I was doing some mindset coaching and my coach was like, we need to make you more comfortable with failure, because it's not a bad thing, because it can get you closer to where you want to be, or get more comfortable with being wrong, because that will probably get you closer to where you want to be. But having grown up in that system where wrong is bad, it's very hard to shake that. So I say that, but something that I'm navigating as well at the moment is just trying to get more comfortable with that.
Mate, I resonate with that a lot. I've had a very difficult relationship with failure. And do you know what's really helped me? Jiu-jitsu. Now, that sounds like a crazy thing to say, but do you know what the most wonderful thing about jiu-jitsu is that the only way to get better is to keep getting beat. That's it. It's just literally failure after failure and learning from the failures. And so it really has been good for me to be brave in the right direction, because the fear's always there, right? We're always scared about what might or may not happen. So being able to step forward and be brave is great. But when you have a fear of failure, or you have a difficult relationship with failure, that's a whole nother a whole nother thing.
It's a whole nother thing. Yeah. But I think there's such a simple phrase, but it's like with your jiu-jitsu, like every failure is a step closer to success. And that's really quite comforting sometimes with failure. It's like, okay, well, that failed, but let's look at why that might have failed. Like with your jiu-jitsu, like, okay, well, maybe I don't know much about jiu-jitsu, but my arm was in the wrong position. And now I know that. So the next time I'm more likely to succeed. So it's like reframing that failure. Yeah, which is, again, not an easy thing to do, but it is very freeing when that happens, because there are some things that you can't control. Like in the jiu-jitsu ring, you might come up against a former UK champion who just happens to now live in Cornwall and is retired, but still was an incredible jiu-jitsu competitor. Like you had no control over who comes into that ring.
Dude, I'm getting beat by young girls half my size. I don't need to go against champions. I'm getting humbled in many ways. It's absolutely fine. You know, it's terrible, in fact. But there you go. That's so important, that relationship with failure. I mean, when would you say was the last time that you really believed you was right about something and you found out you were wrong?
I think there's probably been quite a few things, but I think a good example was when I was talking about last night with my parents, like when I moved to Japan. And I moved there because I was in this corporate rat race, and I was just like, I don't want to be in London. This isn't the place for me. Screw this, blah, 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 blah. And I just did the most drastic thing and went to teach English in Japan in a tiny fishing village. Like, it was so extreme. And it taught me so many things, and I learned a lot. But I was kind of convinced, I'm going to find this like kind of utopia out there. I'm going to live this amazing life. I'm going to be there for years. I'm going to learn fluent Japanese. This is going to be amazing. A work-life balance is going to be amazing. I'm going to have so much purpose. And whilst I had a few of those things, and there were lots of positives, it was incredibly difficult. There was a huge culture shock. I was very lonely there. I was in a long distance relationship with like a 10, 11 hour time difference. So that was incredibly difficult. So I went there with this like young, early to mid 20s, like, I'm going to do this. This is the right thing. And then kind of had an amazing time. But now I look back on it and like, I was wrong in some ways, because what I thought it was going to be like was not reality. Or what I thought would really make me happy and make me tick was not quite the case.
How quickly did you come to realize that you may have been wrong? What was that process like? When did you sort of have a feeling about it to when you actually took action?
I think, the first thing was walking into the apartment when I was there, and I was like, what have I done? It was like really old apartment. There was a dead cockroach in the sink. There were these really sweet Japanese people helping me like set up the room and stuff like that. But again, I remember they all left. I sat on the bed and I think I just cried. I was like, what is this? And what have I done? But I was like, no, what? It's just uncomfortable. This is out of your comfort zone. This is why it feels this way. Like, just keep pushing on. But I think as the months went on, I was supposed to stay for longer than 4 months, but it got to a point where I was like, nah, I've got what I can from this. I've made a mistake. I'm going to go home. And so that's what I did.
I don't reckon that as your life goes on, I think you're going to look at that as far more valuable than a failure. When we're little kids, we sort of have this natural knowing of who we are. And one of the examples I have to use is when kids learn to walk, they don't just get up, fall over and go, oh, okay, well, walking's not for me then. They sort of get up and fall over, and they are fully embracing that it's part of the process.
Yeah.
That process is in essence determination, right? And I think that they know themselves so well to go, no, well, I definitely know I want to walk, so let's just keep cracking away at this. And in that process, they fall over many times and they're strengthening their legs and they're learning what they did wrong. And I think that that's what we do a lot of the time, but we lose that ability to trust ourselves. I've been in that situation that you talk about where I've felt really strongly that this is what I'm going to do next. And the first time I do it, I go, I hate this, but I've committed to it now, and I've told everybody that I'm going to do it, and I've put myself out there on the internet. Now I've got to do it, and I sort of punish myself. Where did that part of us go where we were like, I know this isn't for me. Why am I doing this? Like, why do I keep doing this? I keep coming and taking from myself every single session or time or day or whatever it is, knowing that I don't want to do this at all. So what do you think to that?
Yeah, well, there is that external pressure sometimes, or that fear of embarrassment, or fear of failure from other people's perspective. With Japan, I was like, oh, people are going to think I've failed. Like, it's embarrassing. I built this up. I've told everyone I'm moving to Japan and now I'm coming home. And you kind of come out with your tail between your legs a little bit. And if there was no one else looking at me and like, I'd probably feel way more comfortable about it. But when you have all these eyes on you, it's difficult, especially when people have supported you to get there. And then you come back early and you might feel like, or now I felt like, oh, maybe I've let you down a little bit because I didn't stay for longer, or so there's a feeling of letting yourself down. Then you might feel like you've let other people down. Then there's that feeling of embarrassment because you shouted about it, especially on the world right now. Like, it's not like you might live in a little village and only 5 people knew that you were off to Japan. It's like, well, no, lots of people knew because they would share stuff on Instagram or like LinkedIn or whatever it might be. So there's more eyes on you nowadays, which you can go one of two ways. It can either be amazing if something goes really well, or if you feel like you failed, it can just compound it. In reality, the people that you think are looking at you thinking, oh, he's failed. They're not. They're probably thinking, wow, that was amazing. Like, you went to Japan for 4 months. That was so impressive. But inside you're like, oh, they must be like talking about it. You kind of like convince yourself, but it's never reality.
No, and I think you're right, because that is exactly what I think. Sitting there listening to that, my first thought was, wow, good for you. I don't know if I could ever do that. That's a hell of an achievement, and I respect that. But interestingly enough, I'm sure that there were moments where you're like, I've failed, I'm this, I'm that, or whatever it is. You know, it's interesting how that internal dialogue, that mind chatter just becomes something that's true, even though it's probably not.
Yeah, that negative self-talk can be really strong and quite unpleasant sometimes. And it's definitely something that everyone can get better at. But yeah, it's not easy when you've got that voice in your head, I'm a failure, I'm a failure, I'm a failure. But then when you kind of actually pick it apart and look at all the evidence in your life of where you failed and you succeeded, then you quickly realize that, or actually, no, that's not the case.
And that's what I mean. I think that one day you're going to look back and you're going to realize that the bravery and the lessons and the experiences and the feelings that you had around that trip to Japan, I think you're going to realize that, oh, you can do the things that you're meant to do next because you've done that.
Yeah,
because you've been there and you've experienced it and exposed yourself to it.
Exactly. Like, even looking back, okay, I was in a fishing village, I was really lonely, and that wasn't great for how I felt on a day-to-day basis. But that's a brilliant learning, because it's shown me how much I need community and connection in my life, which lots of us, I mean, we're human, like, we're designed that way. We're not designed to be on our own all the time. And I can't remember the exact number, but like comparing loneliness with the equivalent of smoking a certain amount of cigarettes every day, like those kind of studies around that, we're not designed for that. So being in that experience in Japan on my own, in a fishing village where half the houses were empty because of the aging population in Japan, taught me so much. Now I'm in London, I'm like, okay, I know how important connection and community is for me. I started shoulder to shoulder. I know that's going to give me so much happiness and value, partly because I know what it feels like to be entirely on your own, having been in Japan. When I look back now, that's only positive.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily about people, it's about connection, right? Because I've been in situations before where I've been surrounded by people and felt really lonely because I've got nothing in common with them, or I can't really be myself, or I have to sell this version of myself to them constantly because that's what I've sold or whatever, you know? So it's really interesting. I call that philosophical loneliness, where you can be in a room full of people and feel lonely.
Yeah, that's not a nice feeling when that happens.
Just means you're in the wrong room, right?
Yeah, you're in the wrong room, especially like, as we were talking about earlier, if you feel like you can't be authentically you in that space, you can't express your values, or like it's difficult.
You've spoken a lot on your social, and it seems to be the key event in your life so far was your experience with your father. And you've said your mission is to make sure what happened to your dad doesn't happen to anyone else. What have you learned about the gap between seeing someone's struggle and understanding it, especially when it comes to someone you love? Maybe talk a little bit first around what happened with your dad so people understand.
Yeah. So it was over 5 years ago now. Dad essentially ended up on a bit of a downward spiral and went to hospital for about 6 months with severe depression. And he battled that for a long time. Nearly didn't pull through, but fortunately he did. And he's like now in really good form. And I call him Steve version 2.0 because I think his experience has given him a new perspective on life, and which is really cool and really, really, really special. But it was an incredibly challenging time when that happened.
Was there like a catalyst for that? Was there something that happened?
It's one of the kind of, so what essentially happened is that Dad came out of hospital. And then for about 3 or 4 years, this whole thing almost felt like it was glossed over or buried under the carpet a little bit. And so about this time last year, I sat down with Dad and I said, why do you think you became severely depressed? Because I'm quite an inquisitive, curious person, and it wasn't your normal topic of conversation around the dinner table, but I thought this is a question that needs to be asked, because what are the learnings from this? And so when I spoke to Dad about it, in terms of what the catalyst might have been, there were a few triggers, things that I was familiar with. So stress at work, not reaching out for help soon enough, a poor lifestyle, so lack of exercise, things like that. But there were two themes, which is the themes that I kind of really go into detail in when I do my talks now and on my socials, is a lack of purpose and a lack of connection. Unfortunately, what happened with Dad, which kind of I think is quite a commonplace for lots of people, is that he previously got purpose from his job, but he changed roles, which meant that people weren't coming to him anymore for help. He felt quite directionless. But again, you get stuck in that trap of, well, I've got good job security, I've got good pay, I've got a good pension waiting for me, so I'll just stick it out. So didn't get that purpose from work, didn't feel needed or useful at work. He previously was a football coach, so he volunteered as a football coach for the team that I played for in our village. That gave him a huge amount of purpose, because without Dad, 20 boys wouldn't have been able to play football twice a week, make new friends, learn new skills. So again, that was really big for him. And he also got purpose in his role as a dad to my sister and I. But the problem is that sometimes the things that give us purpose don't stick around forever. He wasn't getting purpose from his day-to-day job. I, at some point in my early teens, moved to a much bigger football team, and so Dad stopped coaching. And then at some point, my sister and I moved out from home. So then Dad felt like he lost a lot of his purpose as a dad. You're then left with this situation where you started to ask yourself questions around, why am I here? Why am I needed? Why am I useful? And what's really interesting about that is when you look at there's a study by, I've got that name, but a brilliant researcher in Australia who looked at male suicide notes. And the two words that they most commonly write on those notes are useless and worthless. When you end up in this situation where you feel like you don't have any purpose, then you start feeling like you're useless and you feel like you're worthless. And that's a common but very scary place to find yourself in. Perfect example of that, Graham Thorpe, the former batting coach for the England cricket team, lost his job in 2022. Core part of his identity and purpose removed from him, and bless him, 2 years later took his own life after entering a kind of really severe period of depression. And so it's a common theme that I see all the time, is this sense of purpose and lacking it, leading to a place where it's like, well, I'm not needed here, I'm not useful, so it's better off if I'm not here. The second theme was a lack of connection. I think as you grow older, your friendship circles shift, they change. You might end up with not that many friends. I mean, 15% of men don't even have one close friend. And as we're designed to connect with people, and especially on that deeper level, so when you haven't got people to connect with and be vulnerable with or share things with, again, it's a very slippery slope. So when you asked what the kind of catalyst was, yes, there are those common things I think lots of people know, but there were those two themes around purpose and connection, which are themes that I'd never thought about before, and themes that I think lots of people don't register as like really core foundational building blocks of good mental health.
I think what you've identified there, I think you've absolutely nailed it. I think you really have. I think purpose and connection. You know why as well? Because we live in a world where, let's just take, this is me being very stereotypical now, but let's just take a building site. You got a bunch of lads all being a bit leery, having a good time, laughing, telling jokes, being a bit inappropriate, all that sort of stuff. And one of them pipes up and says, oh, I'm feeling a bit low because I haven't got any purpose and connection. He's getting ribbed all day long. No one wants to hear that. So what I'm getting to is that I think you're absolutely right. I think that lack of purpose, and purpose doesn't necessarily mean just having a job. It's, why am I doing this? Why am I here? What am I aiming for? Why am I getting up? And it's not necessarily saying that you have to get out of bed with a hop, skip and a jump. It's just knowing that I do have to get up and that there are things I need to do today. I have purpose.
Exactly. What's really interesting is that those two things go hand in hand. So often if you have more purpose, you'll have more connection. And if you have more connection, you have more purpose. The purpose doesn't have to come from work. It could come from helping your elderly neighbor with their weekly shop, right? What a great sense of purpose. But that's only going to come about if you're able to connect with that neighbor. In a world right now where everyone is craving connections, I mean, run clubs are going crazy. Like my own community has gone absolutely crazy over the weekend because people are craving connection with real people in real life. But when you connect with new people, it often leads to more purpose. Another perfect example, like my dad right now connecting with someone new in the village where we live, and he's now meets up with that guy once a week for a walk. Dad's been kind of like coaching him through a challenging life phase, which has given Dad a huge amount of purpose. That wouldn't have happened if they hadn't connected, right? So these things are so linked. They work off each other really nicely.
It's interesting that you say that as well, because I did a talk at a school just after the pandemic, and it was a few months after the pandemic, but there was still the remnants of the impact of the pandemic on society still going on and echoing through the schools. And I did a talk on fear, and the questions I got were all around loneliness and making friends. I mean, some young person came up to me and said that they'd been watching lots of YouTube videos of how to make friends and nothing was working. I mean, apart from the fact that it was utterly heartbreaking to hear that, it stayed with me. And I thought about it for a really long time. And I thought, obviously, we've had a pandemic and people haven't been able to be with each other, but we've had this growth in Zoom and online stuff. And I think that the problem is twofold. I think that you're right, that at that point, there were no genuine connection. We wasn't allowed to go outside our houses or anything like that. But I also think that with Zoom and online videoing and things like that, I think what happened was that interaction mimicked connection. And what it did is it's like you and I have been speaking online and all that sort of stuff, and then we meet each other in real life. And regardless of how well you get on online, there's this awkwardness when you first meet, isn't there? Like, it's like, oh yeah, I sort of know you, but I kind of don't. And you don't know whether you're a handshaker or a hugger or any of these things. And I think that was a problem for when the kids got to know each other online. There was lots of online schooling and lots of opportunities to go through, I know, Snapchat or whatever else. And then when they got to school, there was all of these sort of like personable boundaries that people didn't know. We didn't know how to be around each other. They didn't know how familiar was too familiar. And I think there's that naturally within human beings when we meet each other, there's lots of different ways to get to connect. Yes, we talk to each other, but we also learn that this person doesn't like to shake hands. We also learn that this person doesn't like you too close to them. You also learn this person doesn't like it when you speak too loudly or if you're too much or whatever was going on. You work it out. And it's not necessarily something you talk about, but you just get a vibe, don't you?
Yeah, you pick up on those readings or those feelings. You develop those skills of empathy to be able to read, or that person seems uncomfortable, or whatever it might be. There's also that kind of physical touch element to it, like, hey mate, good to see you, putting your hand on their shoulder, or like a hug, or like whatever it might be. So for me, face-to-face connection is so important, and is poles apart from online connection, because you're missing so many data points, so many like feelings. The ability to just hug someone is so important.
It's like trying to learn to fly a helicopter online and then getting in a helicopter. It's like, wait a minute.
It's not. Exactly. It's not the same thing. It's not the same thing.
And there's bigger consequences.
Exactly. I think a really important point around connection is that it can also be very simple and very small. So even walking down the street and just smiling at someone, or just saying good morning, or saying, might be waiting in the queue and be like, oh, dude, I love your jumper. It can be something really small. And I'm trying to build that more into my life. But when I do that, it makes it feel so good. And it also makes that person's day as well.
I had an experience just like that. I was in a supermarket and there was all these people in front of me that were complaining how miserable the person serving was. And I got to the front there and I could see this person was obviously having a terrible day. And I said to them, I love the smell of your perfume. And they sort of looked at me and they went, me? And I went, yeah, it smells really nice. And they just went, thank you. And you could just see it just made a big difference.
Yeah, it doesn't take much at all. It really doesn't take, but that small action can make someone's day.
And that's it. That's connection, isn't it? It's not always about deep and meaningful conversations. Sometimes it's just being like my wife yesterday. We were coming off the train and I was carrying all the luggage and I got to the top there and she had started talking to some lady who was on crutches and she took her bag for her because she was struggling. And it's not a big act, but it was a massive act to that lady who was really struggling. She had a crutch and she was trying to hold on to the thing and carry the bag. And my wife just came along and said, can I help? And she's like, oh, thank you. It just makes them little interactions. It's not game changing, but it was to her.
Exactly. There's a whole sliding scale of connection from moments like that to a very deep conversation with your best mate. There's a whole range of things in the middle of that. So just finding those time for those small ones can be just as powerful as having those deeper conversations.
So watching your father, identifying that was purpose and connection that were lacking, that ultimately led to his mental health on the decline. What did you learn about the gap between seeing his struggle and understanding it? Obviously, him being somebody that you love.
It's a very difficult place to find yourself in. Like, I get questions about this from people. How did you navigate that? How did you deal with that? Because you just want to fix it. You want to have the solution. You want to make it all better, but you can't. So that's one thing that's very difficult. And I think with mental health, it's especially difficult because if someone has broken their arm, you can clearly, tangibly see what is going on for that person. Their bone in their arm is snapped in half. They've got a cast on it. So yeah, I get that. I know what it would feel like if my arm was snapped in half and I'd have a cast on it. But when it comes to something like depression or anxiety, especially when someone goes very deep into that hole, very deep into that downward spiral. If you haven't been there yourself, it's very difficult to understand it because you can't see it. You can only see the like, outcome of it, lots of confusion or very hunched over, or you can see those physical symptoms to it, but it's very hard to understand what's going on inside that person's head. And you just want to like shake them and be like, come on, let's just go outside for a walk. Come on. Because you think that's what's going to help. But actually, when that person is in that position or in that state, that is the last thing they want. That is a lot. That's incredibly overwhelming. It's not what they might need in that moment. And so it might just be like sitting next to them and just telling them about your day. It could be something so simple and so small. Like when I asked Dad about it, he's like, yeah, his friends didn't know what to do. And he was like, all I needed maybe was them just to come over and just tell me about their day, just something normal. Whereas there's that desire to just fix and be like, okay, right, Dad, come on, we're going outside, we're doing this, which all comes from a very good place. But when someone is in the depths of depression or severe anxiety, it's that desire can help and sometimes have the opposite effect. So it's a very difficult balance to get right when you're seeing someone that you love struggle. You just want to fix it. But actually, it's sometimes those very simple, more gentle actions that might be more effective.
I think what you've just beautifully articulated is something we talked about just before we hit record. It's that when you're sat with somebody who is struggling with their mental health, is the feelings that it brings up within you, and recognizing that this sense of helplessness that I'm having, I really need or want them to be better. But so that's about me, not about them.
Yeah.
And my actions now are dictated by how I feel about how they feel, not how they feel. So and it's interesting because what you're doing, not you, but what people tend to do, and it's very understandable and it's very human, is in essence what they do is they put more pressure on this person who doesn't understand how they feel right now, doesn't really get why they feel the way they feel. All they know is that they do feel this way. And you're kind of asking them to, not literally, but you're kind of thinking, well, stop it. Do you realize that you're making me feel worse? It's like, oh, great, that's not helping me at all. So it's a real trap, but it's such a human thing to do. It's because you love that person. I had somebody in my life who very slowly over time, their mental health went, and I didn't realize how bad it had got until they came back, until they started that fight back. And that's when I became emotional and thought, holy shit, we really got close there. We really did nearly lose that person because they were totally withdrawn and physically and mentally and everything about them. Like when I look back and even when I look at pictures, I realized that they were really struggling. And how did we not notice it? Because I don't know. I think again, sometimes we avoid those people because they make us feel bad or whatever it is. It's a real storm, right?
Well, again, it comes back to the importance of connection and the frequency of that connection, because there's lots of comments or actions that encourage us to check in with someone every 6 months or just check in. But it's like I just don't align with it or agree with it, because if you check in with someone once every 6 months, you're missing so much data. Someone can very easily hide how they're feeling on a 6-monthly checkup call. I'm like, yeah, I'm all right. Yeah, like that's so easy to hide for a half an hour conversation. But if you're connecting with,
you're right. So how far do you push? Right? I asked you how you doing. You say, yeah, I'm fine. Well, what do I go? What really? Are you?
Yeah. Well,
do I get aggressive with you? What do I do?
You only. Yeah, well, you can only make that judgment when you have that regular, frequent connection. If it's once a week or once a fortnight, that's when you can say, okay, well, I've seen you every week for the past 8 weeks. And maybe on week 6, you're like, oh, mate, I noticed you seem a little bit quiet today. I just wanted to check if everything is okay. I'm always here to listen if you need me to. Simple as that. If you're not connecting frequently, you don't have that information, because if you connect only on week 8 when they're good, or it's like, oh yeah, no, it's all good, and you might say when you first meet, like, hey, how are you doing? Yeah, good. And then a few hours in, you might be like, and how are you really doing? And they might say that they're fine still, but you've done your bit. Like you can't do much more than that. But when you have all those data points every single week, it's so much easier to notice when someone has gone a bit quiet or seems a bit down, and it's okay to say, hey mate, like no worries if you don't want to talk about it, but I just noticed you're a bit quiet this week. It's as simple as that. And yeah, I could talk about it for hours.
Some of those powerful things I've seen is by just sitting and watching somebody. I think things like spiraling, let's say, or ranting or whatever you want to call it, they get a bit of a bad rap. But I think sometimes what ranting is somebody that's been holding back how they feel because they haven't felt they've had the space or the time or whatever to really say how they feel. Perhaps they didn't even realize. So they say 1 or 2 words and then they hear themselves say that, and then those words lead to another word, which leads to another word, and before you know it, they're just saying stuff unfiltered. Their brain's not keeping up with it, and the truth's coming out, and they're starting to hear how they really feel. And it's sometimes in their moments when they realize what the problem is, not even you. Like they've never heard themselves say those things because they've always had to be composed or quiet quiet or be whatever it is that they feel they should be for other people, because we don't want them to feel sad, or we don't want them to worry about us, or we don't want them to do this. Quite often when I let people rant, I say, listen, have a good old rant to me, use all the swear words, call me what you want, do what you want. And it's interesting, it starts off almost funny, and then it gets really kind of, and you know what, I'm really angry. Actually, I'm really angry about that. And that's just giving someone a space, like you said, not telling them what to do, not trying to fix the problem, just giving them the space to have an honest conversation with themselves, in a sense.
Yeah.
Not even you're just there.
That is, you've hit on such an important point there, Johnny, because, in the community that I run, I see it comes from a very good place, but people always want to fix. Someone will share something that's like, okay, well, step 1, let's do this. Step 2, let's do it. But what people often want is they just want someone to listen. And a really helpful skill that's very simple is that when someone, maybe they've been talking for 30 seconds, maybe a minute, and they stop talking, leave it another 5 to 10 seconds before you respond, because what is likely is that they'll keep going and they'll keep going and they'll keep going. As I said before this call, I'm doing my facilitation training for men's circle, and in the men's circle every guy gets 8 minutes, about approximately 8 minutes to just talk. And it's amazing, like they'll just go and go and go, and there'll be pauses, and they'll be like, and then so when we go into this fixing mentality, someone will share something for 30 seconds, and then immediately, I've been guilty of it as well, you dive in with the fix. I'm sorry, mate, but that sounds really tough, but have you thought about doing this? Whereas actually, what's going to benefit that person a lot more is if you just go, okay, you give some silence, and then they'll keep going and they'll keep going. And then at the end, they've had their whole time, 5-10 minutes to just get it out. You've listened to it. You've actively listened to it. You're not away with the fairies somewhere. You're actually listening. Again, a skill that I'm trying to get much better at. And is if you're not good at it, that's okay. Like it's a common skills gap. Get to the end and then go, okay, then asking someone, do you want me to continue listening? Do you want my advice? Do you want an opinion? Giving them the option is a really powerful thing to do, rather than just, I know what they want. They need a 3-step solution, and that's great. And I've smashed it and I feel brilliant now because I've given them the solution. But as you said, it's asking them the right questions, or just listening for them to work out for themselves. And like, yeah, I'm really angry about that. And you might ask a follow-up question once they finish talking, and something like, okay, so how did that make you feel? I noticed when you said that, you seem really angry. And then they'll expand on it. That's where the skill lies.
Really, what it sounds like you're saying as well is that people offer solutions when that person doesn't fully understand what the problem is yet.
Exactly.
And when they start ranting and they start exploring the problem, they really get into, for example, like a lot of men are angry. Yeah, there's a lot of anger within men. We see that all the time. We hear about it all the time. But anger isn't the problem. Anger's a symptom of the problem.
Yeah.
Like they're angry about something, and we can sit there and say to someone all day long, because let's face it, the only advice you can feasibly give to an angry person is stop being angry. Well, guess what that's going to achieve? It's going to make them more angry, probably. So really, it's about understanding, okay, so what's going on? What's made you angry? Well, this person's a debt. And then you let them talk, and then they find out actually they felt really rejected at work. They felt really rejected by this person at work, and their issue is rejection. And then they've got something to look into. They've got some choices, some options, and something to explore, instead of just feeling helpless at the fact that you feel angry, because that is a very helpless feeling. It's like you're angry, it's a response. It's like having a cough. It's like the problem isn't the cough. The cough is caused by something, so it's about understanding that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think sometimes, with anger, like sometimes you just have to get it out. You might have to shout at a wall, or go and pump some weights and just be like, oh, I'm so angry. But it's important after that to then be like, okay, well, why was I actually angry? More widely in society right now, unfortunately, we see lots of huge protests about, I won't go into details, but about things that it's like, okay, are you really angry about that? Or are you angry about something else? And you're using that as an opportunity to take out your anger on something. And so I think it requires self-awareness. It requires a lot of, really knowing yourself, but taking that step and being like, okay, well, why am I actually angry about that? And then working through it.
So really, to make this actionable for people, in a world where mental health conversations are becoming more common, because they are, we recently at an event where there was lots of conversations around mental health. What do you think we're still getting wrong about prevention, especially among men who appear to be doing okay and they're okay and we're fine and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah. So I think lots of the mental health fixes are all focused on crisis point. So it's like when someone is very deep in the hole, that's when we'll try and fix it with medication or whatever it might be, time in hospital, whatever it might be. But the problem is that when someone is very deep inside that hole, very hard to get them out of it. right? So my dad, perfect example. It's very, very hard to get him out of that hole. But what we're missing is that, again, it comes back to that regular connection piece. If you can catch someone when they're having a little wobble, that's where we want to be, because you can stop them going all the way down into that hole. You can just be like, oh, mate, I noticed you're a bit quiet this week. And you catch it before it goes. It's just like anything. Like, we're trying to get better at preventing heart disease or cancer, whatever it might be. Both, horrible things. It's the classic phrase, prevention is better than cure. And I think it should be exactly the same for people's mental health. In terms of what we're getting wrong, we're focusing too much on this crisis point and not focusing enough on the kind of grassroots of mental health. Like, if someone comes to a shoulder event and they're a little bit wobbly, okay, well, we can catch them before they end up 6 months down the line in a really deep hole because they, I don't know, are really struggling with a breakup and they just can't get through it because they didn't have that earlier touch point. They didn't have that regular connection. They're on their own. They're in their own thoughts all day long. Before you know it, it happens to all of us. You're really deep in that hole. So it's really important that we focus on that first step. And I think especially for men is that been lots of noise around men need to talk more, men need to talk more, men need to talk more, which is noise we've been hearing for years. But the suicide rate for men in the UK from 2017 to 2023 has gone up. So there's got to be a point where you're looking at all of this campaigning, which is brilliant awareness. It's a brilliant message. I'm not doubting that for a second, but it's not working. And obviously it's a very complex issue, but it's like the more and more you tell someone to do something, the more likely they are to do it less. When I was a kid and my parents were like, tidy your room, I'd be like, no, I'm not tidying my room. You push back, you push back, you push back. And so again, this is what I talk about in organizations, but it's like, well, have men specifically ever been told why you should open up and be vulnerable from time to time? I'm not saying every week, like I'm really not. I think there's an unrealistic expectation on men to be vulnerable all the time. I'm not saying that. If it's once every few months, if it's once every 6 months, if it stops you from getting into that hole, brilliant. There's no pressure on it. So they've been told why and they don't been told how. Like how?
That's important.
How do you do it? Like how, because it's hardwired and like with those traditional masculine stereotypes, we're hardwired not to do it. So how do you do it? So those are my two kind of huge things that I talk about is, well, why should you connect and how should you do it? And so I think this constant bombardment of talk more, it's not working. It's not working. So something has to change.
There's this monk called Dan and he says that we're always asking children to concentrate at school, but we never show them how. There's no lessons on how to concentrate and how to focus and all those things. Your earlier conversations on this podcast were around getting to know yourself. And I think that's a fundamental thing. And quite a lot of the time we get to know ourselves through the reflections we get from other people. So like you said, connection. We get to speak to other people and we learn a bit about ourselves because we're having to answer questions, right? So, what do you do? And how do you do this? And what sort of sports do you like? What music do you like? So many times people have said to me like, oh, what type of movies do you like? And I've had to really think and go, I don't know actually. So you're getting to know yourself in a moment by answering questions. So you've explained why it's important, I think. Do you feel you have?
There's 4 reasons why people should kind of connect and open up in a deeper way from time to time. And they are as follows. So number 1 is there's definitely a balance to be struck, but there's lots of research out there that shows that constantly suppressing your emotions does increase your risk of depression. If you're exercising to reduce your risk of heart disease or stroke or whatever it might be, I'd ask the question as to why you're not doing the same for your mental health when you look at that information. The second thing is that it's actually like a real life Google search. So if you open up and seek help on something, it's highly likely that someone else that you know has been through exactly the same thing, and so they're able to provide you with very high quality advice. I see it in my community all the time. Oh yeah, mate, I've been through exactly the same thing. This is how I got through it. This is how I navigated it. Or at least you're not alone, because 5 years ago this happened to me too. ChatGPT, Google can never replace that. Never replace that lived experience. The third reason is that we're in a world where 15% of men don't have one close friend, but by opening up a little bit with someone, you can turn them from an acquaintance or a friend into a brother and massively improve the quality of your friendships. It's brief anecdote, but I lived in Vancouver last year, and the one guy that I'm still in contact with now I'm back in the UK, text once a week, call about once a fortnight. He's the only one where we connect on that deeper level. Every other connection I had was surface level, and I'm not in contact with them anymore. And I truly believe I wouldn't still be in contact with my mate Dan if we hadn't opened up in this deeper way, because we massively strengthen the quality of our friendship. And the fourth thing is that if you open up, you can make yourself feel less alone, but you can help a mate out as well. And it's such a great story. But Luke, who runs 2 Pints Deep, started it because after a few pints, he opened up in front of his mates and he told them that he was struggling. In that same evening, 2 of his mates in the same group also said, yeah, I'm really struggling too. And so without being really dramatic, if Luke hadn't opened up, would those 2 guys still be here? I don't know. That's what
it's like you gave him permission, right?
Exactly. So if you're not doing it for yourself, at least do it for your mate. So those are the 4 reasons why we should connect in this deeper way from time to time. And in terms of how you should do it, there's an acronym that I've created, which hopefully will help people listening to this podcast, because we all have an acronym. And I'll do it with an example. So when I was living close to him, me and my mate Steve, every Tuesday morning at 7:15 a.m, we'd meet outside Clapham South Tube Station and we'd go for a run and a workout. And we did it every Tuesday. When we first started doing that, I just viewed it as a run and a workout with my mate Steve. We did it for about 6 months. By the end, I was like, this is a run and a workout and an incredibly important space for both of us that I didn't realize would become that way when we first started doing it. So the acronym is S.O.L.I.D. So it was safe because by doing the work that I do, I know the right questions to ask and the right responses to give. And by chance, so did Steve. So there's an education piece around there around what, empathetic questions, empathetic responses. I'm working on a resource at the moment that I can share with people that will educate them on that. We can try and share that afterwards if people want to have that. The second thing is often. So it needs to be once a week, twice a week, once a fortnight, whatever it might be. It needs to be low key. For me with Steve, it was just like, I was going for a run and a workout. Something that I've done for years. I didn't think about it as this big thing. It was intentional because when our alarms went off on a Tuesday morning, we had to show up for each other and be there, even if it was raining, even if it was cold. And I'd argue for men that it needs to be dynamic. So lots of research shows that men connect much more effectively shoulder to shoulder rather than face to face and working on a common goal together. So me and Steve were like, okay, I want to do 4 sets of 10 pull-ups. This is our goal. We're going to work towards it together. We were shoulder to shoulder doing this activity. We had space in between sets to chat if we wanted to. And without realizing, we created this space where in that 6 months, I ended up going through a breakup and Steve ended up really struggling because he got made redundant and it was hard for him to find a new job in the job market. When we started this weekly meetup, it was just to run and a workout. By the end of this weekly meetup, it became this space where we could lean on each other when we needed it. It wasn't this is your weekly therapy session and we're going to really just go deep every single week. It was like, okay, we're on week 8 and I'm really struggling today. And I know I've got this space with Steve on Tuesday. It's Sunday now. I'm feeling crap, but it's all right. I know I'm seeing Steve on Tuesday. I know I've got this space. I know I've got someone to listen. That's what's so important. So that acronym S.O.L.I.D is a potential takeaway that people can use for when they're trying to connect, especially for men, with that dynamic piece, rather than saying to mate, do you want to go grab a coffee and let's go and talk about how we feel? It's not going to work. Even if it has the best intentions, it's not going to work. Whereas, hey mate, I'm doing some DIY in my flat. I need to put some plasterboard up. Can you come and help? I could really love your help. Naturally, in that environment, it's likely that when how are you really doing, mate? Then it will be like, yeah, mate, I'm really struggling at the moment, because it's that space that feels safe, especially for men.
That's incredible. Honestly, mate, that is absolutely fabulous. I'm just going to summarize why you should do the work, why we should talk, why men should talk. Because suppressing your emotions is dangerous and it can end up mounting up and causing us problems. Like you said, it's almost like suppressing your emotions is eating junk food, right? It is, it doesn't get you straight away, but it will eventually.
Yeah.
Lived experience, getting that real life advice from another bloke who's been through it, who understands it, who gets how you feel. You don't have to overly explain it. They look at you and they go, yep, I get it. And you just think, thank God, not a weirdo. I have to believe you. And then you've got the effort. So much like a house plant, it's not just buying a house plant, you've got to look after it. So nurturing that relationship, looking after that relationship, respecting that relationship. I think a key thing between men is respect. We have to respect each other. Doesn't mean we have to worship each other, just respect is enough.
Yeah.
And that empathy, when you're sharing how you feel, it might not be. In fact, I remember once someone was going through something in my friendship group and I chose on a night out over the table just to share something that I'd gone through because I knew that other person was.
Yeah.
So I just shared it and I just said, just something I wanted to share. And the other person come over to me later in the night and said, I know why you shared that. That was directed at me. I said, maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. It is what it is. Take what you want from that. Yeah. And he's just like, love you, brother, and gave me a hug, man. So, that's that. But that S.O.L.I.D acronym, that's fantastic. That's absolutely fantastic, because what that does is it explains exactly why I know so much about the guys that I do jiu-jitsu with in such a short time.
Yeah.
Because it's a safe environment. It is literally in that room. We're all respecting each other. Do you know how much respect and trust it takes to roll around with another guy and trust that when he puts that choke on and you tap, that he's going to let go? Yeah. It's so you've created a safe environment. We do it often. So it's regular. It's every week, sometimes twice a week for me. Low key. We're not big song and dance. It's not all over social media. It's just low key. Intentional. Very intentional.
Yeah, you got to show up.
And there's another thing about it. What I love is I was thinking about this, why is it I'm rolling around with somebody and they tap me out and then we're sat on the side recovering and they start telling me something? Well, tell you what, there's nothing so good for vulnerability than tapping somebody out before they start sharing. It's quite helpful.
Yeah.
And then the last one, dynamic, like you said, it's like going on a drive, isn't it? I noticed that when me and my brother are in the car, if we could driving somewhere, we're chatting because I'm not looking directly at him with expectation, and we're just sort of in and out of conversation, discussing what's on the radio, discussing the music, chatting about this and that, you know?
Exactly.
So, mate, you should be really proud of that, because that
You.
is actually, without sounding, it's a bit cringy, but is what I want to say. That's a solid example. It really is. It's so bad, right? I didn't mean that to come out like that, but it is. It's a solid example, like a solid acronym. Love it. You need to get that copyrighted.
Yeah, honestly, as I was saying that, I was like, putting this on air, like I probably should get that wrapped up.
Yeah,
no
get on it, mate. It's blown me away. That's really good, because I think, like you say, men love acronyms because, well, not just men, everybody loves acronyms, because in the moments when you are really hitting crisis point, you're so overwhelmed. So remembering what solid means, okay, I need to find a safe environment. I need somewhere I can go often. I need somewhere that's going to be low key, because obviously I don't want people to know right now because I'm having a bit of shame about things and all them sort of stuff. Having that intentional, it's not about going to talk, it's about intentionally doing whatever, you know, whatever it is that we're going to do, running, gym, jiu-jitsu, whatever it is, and keeping it dynamic. I just absolutely love it. Good effort, man. Love that.
Sweet. Thanks, man.
So I've taken up loads of your time, man. It's been a great conversation. I just got one question just before you go, as something I ask everybody, and is there anything you'd like to pass on that could help people with their self-development?
Yeah. I would say, I think a really important thing, and I said this on another podcast, but is that daily-ish is good enough. I feel like there's such like a harsh and strict like productivity mindset of like you must be doing all day, every day. Like if you want to get into the practice of journaling and you are supposed to do it every day of the week and you miss a day and you're like, oh my God, I missed, like, that's fine. Daily-ish is good enough. And I think that's so important to just be a little bit easier on yourself, because you're putting the effort in, you're doing the work, you're trying to make this happen. But there might be a day where you're just absolutely cracking and you just can't do it. And that's so fine. That's absolutely fine. Obviously, if you're trying to get into a journal practice and you just don't do it any day for like 2 weeks, and obviously that's not going to work and you can't take it to that extreme. But I think it's really important to just remember doing things daily-ish is good enough.
Yeah. I remember when I was a fitness trainer, I used to say 80-20, because you've got to live life, right? When that thing that you're practicing becomes too burdensome, then it becomes something you resent doing.
Exactly.
And that's not helpful.
Exactly. You got to enjoy the process.
So, exactly. And that means you can take time off. You know, I've been running really hard recently by doing lots of different public speaking events and stuff. And it's involved a lot of traveling. And I've really felt tired the last couple of days. And I've observed my own behavior in the sense of that I've really struggled to do nothing, even though I really know that I need to. You know,
hard to do nothing.
You know? Yeah, it's been hard. It's been difficult. Like I've really struggled with it. I kept getting this thing like I should just do this, I should just do that. And even at times found myself doing work thinking, no, you told yourself you weren't going to do this. Get away from your computer. Stop checking your emails on your phone, all that sort of stuff. So great advice. Daily-ish. Yeah. And just lastly, where can people find you? And is there anything you want to direct their attention to before you go?
You can find me on Instagram's probably the best place, just at Dan Shrigley. I'm on TikTok as well. Welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn if that's a preference too. And yeah, that's kind of it really. If you want to join the community, there's an Instagram page called Shoulder to Shoulder Community. So check that out. And yeah, I'm kind of on a mission right now to just impact as many people as possible. So I'm really like loving doing more talks to share Dad's story and what we learned from it. So what we talked about today, but in more depth. So if that's of interest to anyone, then give me a shout.
Just before you go, actually, just tell people that might be interested in the Shoulder to Shoulder community, what is it and what they get when they come along?
Yeah, so we do, at the moment, our structure is every 2 weeks we do a walk and a coffee in Hyde Park in London. We also do other special events, so like sauna and cold dips. I think we're trying to organise some more yoga. We've done that before. We've got our winter social coming up as well, which I think will just be more casual and laid back. But yeah, the focus is on in real life events, connecting face to face. We do have a WhatsApp space as well, so there's various groups in there, like a books channel, DIY channel, parenting channel. So people, if you can't make a face-to-face event, you can maybe seek advice in some of those chats. And that's where it's at right now. And the community is all focused around growing together, connecting with new people. We, values wise, it's all about, respect. It's about ambition, but not in the traditional sense, just ambition to be kind of the best that we can be and just be happy, about growth, about being authentic. Those are the kind of the values that we live by. And it's a very respectful, kind place. That's how I would describe it and how I would want people to feel when they come to a shoulder to shoulder event.
Well Oh, that's absolutely perfect. And what I'll do is I'll stick all that stuff in the show notes for anyone that wants to link to it. Dan, mate, it's been an absolute privilege to talk to you today. I've really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you for sharing all that you have about yourself and your father's experiences and what you've done with that information. I think you're a hell of a guy, man. And that S.O.L.I.D acronym, that's going to stay with me. Thank you.
Thanks, Johnny. Thanks for having me on.